Let's go Ravens! There are plenty of reasons to feel excited about the future of the Baltimore Ravens right now. The roster looks strong. There's optimism surrounding the team. Players are building chemistry. And many fans are already looking ahead to what this group could accomplish. But what if I told you that one unresolved issue could end up becoming the biggest story in Baltimore over the next 2 years? Not because anything bad has happened. Not because there is panic. But because it involves the one player every Ravens fan agrees is irreplaceable. Lamar Jackson. And here's the part that should grab everyone's attention. The closer you look at the current situation, the more you realize that there are two completely different ways to view it. One side sees reasons to be optimistic. The other side sees a clock that keeps moving. And depending on which side you're on, you may feel either very confident or very nervous about what comes next. Before we go any further, make sure you've already hit the like button if you believe Lamar Jackson should spend his entire career in Baltimore. And let's fill the comment section with positive energy today. Comment, "Forever a Raven, Lamar." I want to see how many members of Ravens flock believe the future remains bright with Lamar Jackson leading this franchise. Now, my opinion on this situation is actually more optimistic than pessimistic. Based on the information being discussed, the biggest positive sign isn't necessarily contract numbers or negotiation details. It's the fact that there doesn't appear to be the same public frustration that surrounded previous discussions. The emphasis on communication, the continued presence around the team, and the belief that both sides remain connected all point toward a healthier situation than many fans may realize. Of course, none of that guarantees an agreement. A contract isn't real until it's signed. But if you're looking for reasons to feel encouraged, there are definitely some signs that suggest things may be moving in a much better direction than people think. And one respected Ravens voice may have just revealed why fans should be paying very close attention to what's happening behind the scenes. Let's get into it. I want to see how many Ravens fans believe the future of this franchise should continue with number 8 leading the way. Now, my opinion on this situation is pretty straightforward. Based on the information being discussed, I think the most encouraging sign isn't necessarily what has been said publicly. It's what hasn't happened publicly. The material points toward a much calmer environment compared to previous contract discussions. There doesn't appear to be the same level of public frustration being described, and that's important. Of course, none of that guarantees a deal gets done. Contracts only matter when they're signed. But if communication is healthy and both sides continue moving in the same direction, that's a much better place to be than where things stood during previous negotiations. And one comment from a respected Ravens observer may have just given fans a reason to feel much more optimistic about where this situation is heading. The more you look at this situation, Ravens fans, the more you realize why it continues to generate so much discussion. This isn't just another contract. This isn't just another player. This is Lamar Jackson. And according to the information being discussed, one of the biggest reasons for optimism right now is the belief that the relationship between Lamar Jackson and the Ravens appears to be in a much healthier place than it was during previous negotiations. That matters, because when people think back to the last major contract saga, they remember how public it became. They remember the uncertainty. They remember the frustration. They remember the speculation that seemed to grow every single day. This time, however, the conversation feels different. At least that's the perspective being presented by Jeff Zrebiec, who stated that he still believes a deal gets done and that he doesn't sense the same frustration that existed in the past. Now, that's important because the optimism isn't being built around rumors. It's being built around observations. One of the biggest observations mentioned is Lamar Jackson's continued presence around the team throughout the offseason. The argument being made is simple. If there were significant frustration over the contract situation, would Lamar be spending so much time around the organization? It's a fair question, and it's one that many Ravens fans have probably asked themselves, because actions often tell a story that words cannot. According to the discussion, Lamar has been around his teammates. He's been involved during off-season activities. He's been participating and continuing to build relationships within the organization. Those are all viewed as positive signs regarding the long-term relationship between both sides. But here's where things become especially interesting. Even with all the optimism, nobody is pretending that the situation has already been solved. Far from it. The material repeatedly returns to the same reality. Nothing is finished until the contract is signed. And that's the part that creates tension. Because Ravens fans can feel positive. Observers can feel optimistic. People close to the team can believe things are moving in the right direction. Yet none of that changes the fact that the agreement still needs to happen. Another fascinating point raised during the discussion is how quickly time passes in the NFL. It can be easy for fans to look at the calendar and think there is plenty of time left. After all, games haven't even been played yet. The future can feel far away. But the argument presented is that the years with Lamar Jackson as Baltimore's quarterback have gone by incredibly fast. If those years disappeared that quickly, the remaining time before another contract decision arrives could move even faster. And that's why this issue continues to linger in the background. Not because people expect something negative, not because there is panic, but because everyone understands how important it is. When you're talking about the franchise quarterback, there is no bigger conversation than making sure the future remains secure. What may be most encouraging to Ravens fans is the emphasis on communication. According to the information discussed, both Lamar Jackson and Eric DeCosta have consistently maintained that contract negotiations remain private. There have been no public negotiations, no public back and forth, no public pressure campaigns. Instead, the expectation is that conversations remain inside the building. That doesn't necessarily make headlines. But compared to what people experienced in previous negotiations, it may actually be one of the most positive developments of all. Because private communication often creates fewer distractions. It allows both sides to focus on solutions rather than public narratives. Still, there is one question that hangs over everything. When will it happen? Not if, when. Because that appears to be where much of the optimism is coming from. The belief that both sides ultimately want the same outcome. The challenge now is getting from optimism to agreement, from confidence to signatures, from expectation to reality. And until that moment arrives, this story will continue following the Ravens throughout the season. Because no matter how exciting the roster looks, no matter how much potential people see, and no matter how many positive signs emerge, Ravens fans know there is one announcement they are still waiting to hear. But there's another layer to this story that Ravens fans shouldn't overlook. The optimism surrounding a future extension isn't only coming from comments about communication or observations about Lamar Jackson being around the team. It's also coming from something much simpler. The lack of visible conflict. Think about how different this feels compared to previous situations. When there is tension between a player and an organization, people usually know it. Rumors start leaking. Frustrations become public. Questions become harder to avoid. The conversation takes on a completely different tone. According to the discussion surrounding this situation, that doesn't appear to be what's happening right now. Instead, the focus continues to be on communication, professionalism, and the belief that both sides understand what's at stake. And what is at stake couldn't be any bigger. Because we're not talking about replacing a position player. We're not talking about filling a roster hole. We're talking about the player many fans view as the face of the franchise. The player who has become the centerpiece of everything Baltimore wants to accomplish moving forward. That's why every update, every comment, and every observation surrounding this situation immediately grabs attention. Fans know how important it is. The organization knows how important it is. And according to the material being discussed, there seems to be a belief that Lamar Jackson knows exactly how important it is too. Another interesting aspect is the way both sides have consistently handled questions about the contract. Whenever the subject comes up publicly, the response remains the same. Keep it private. Keep it in-house. Don't negotiate through the media. That approach has become a recurring theme. Now, some fans may find that frustrating. After all, everyone wants answers. Everyone wants certainty. Everyone wants to know exactly where things stand. But from another perspective, that privacy could actually be one of the healthiest signs available right now. Because private negotiations often mean the focus remains on reaching an agreement rather than winning a public argument. Still, there's one reality nobody can escape. The closer time moves forward, the louder these conversations will become. That's inevitable.